Hi everyone and welcome to my Affinity Creative Session. I'm Aurelie, a lettering artist based on the Gold Coast in Australia, and I'm passionate about helping other creatives improve their skills and also sell their own digital products online. In today's creative session, I'm going to show you my method for drawing a 3D letter and creating a super cool chrome effect using Affinity Designer on the iPad. I will demonstrate techniques to draw your vector, add colors, as well as how to use different blending modes for your layers to create realistic shadows and highlights. All of that using my 3D Letters Toolkit for Affinity, of course. I have linked the toolkit in the description box below. This is a beginner-friendly tutorial, but if you're new to Affinity, I recommend replicating the exact same design as mine. And if you've used Affinity before, then I encourage you to create your own letter form and play with different colors and textures. All right, let's jump straight into it. Let's begin. I've just opened up Affinity. I'm going to create a new document. I'm going to make my canvas A4, make sure it is 300 dpi, and we're going to work in RGB. I'm just going to click OK. Now we're going to first trace the letter. I have already drawn some sketches in my notebook, so I have taken a photo of this S on my phone and I'm going to trace it. At this stage, you can trace any letter you want, any of your lettering, or you can use an existing typeface. I'm working in the designer mode. I'm going to tap on this button and click place. And here I'm going to insert a photo of my sketch that I took with my phone. You're going to click add, and then you're going to place that photo. So you just place it so the S is in the center of my canvas. Now going into my layers, I'm just going to lower the opacity of this layer. So I'm going to make it 20%. And then I'm going to lock this layer. So I just kind of slide my Apple Pencil on this layer, gives me the option to lock this layer. Now I'm going to create a new layer, and it's going to be a vector layer. And here I'm going to grab the pen tool. And what you want to do is make sure you are drawing with black. So if you go on your colors, you can change the color of your stroke. And I'm going to make sure it is black. Now the point size is 0.2, which is fine. And I'm just going to start drawing my shape. And all I'm doing is drawing my vector points. Trying to follow my sketch as best as I can. And for this little part here, I'm going to keep it straight and we can round the corner later on. It doesn't have to be perfect for now because we're going to readjust those anchor points in a minute. All I'm trying to do is just position those anchor points in the right spot. So you should have something like this. Let's increase the size of that stroke so we can see a little bit better what we're doing. And we can rectify anything that is not looking good. So I'm going to grab this brush, the node brush, and just readjust my anchor points. I'm going to refine my sketch a little bit because it does look a little bit wonky in some places. All right, this is looking pretty good. Now I'm going to make those corners rounded. So I'm just going to select these two, and then I'm going to click on the corners button, and you should be able to just click on any corner. I'll do that again so you can see, but you can click on any nodes and kind of drag it so it creates a round corner. I'll do that again. So grabbing my nodes here, and then the round corners option, and then drag it then down how far as you want. Great, I like this shape, it's looking good. Now we can start creating an inside stroke. So I'm going to duplicate that layer. I'm going to just rename it first. And I'm going to call it stroke S. And in order to duplicate, you just select your object. So using the selection tool, tap on those three buttons and click copy, and then tap again and paste. Now with the second one, I'm going to then grab this icon here, which is the contour icon. And with that one, you can actually go out or in, and it kind of just creates the stroke. So I'll let you play with that, but I want to go kind of inside, creating like an inner stroke, something like that. Feel free to play with any size you want, but I'm going to go with something like this. You should have two shapes now. So you should have the outside stroke and the inside stroke. So let's rename that one just so that we know stroke S inside, just so that it doesn't get too confusing when we have so many layers. Now I'm going to grab the outside stroke and I'm going to click copy again and paste. Now I'm going to select the layer at the bottom, so the one underneath, and using my selection tool, I'm going to move it down. So that's going to be my dimensional effect, but I want to make it look like it's kind of coming forward. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And in order to resize without distorting, you resize your shape, but you place a finger on your canvas and you can resize it without distorting your shape. So I'm going to make it slightly smaller, something like that, kind of trying to follow my sketch underneath. So that's going to be my dimensional effect. It's getting a little bit confusing here, but we should have three shapes. So I'm going to rename them. So this is stroke S, the dimension. So this is the one at the very bottom. This one is the outside. Now everything is on one layer. So what I can do is copy everything and paste it. I have now a second layer with everything. So essentially all I've done is just duplicate that. So now I can hide the previous one. I can also hide my reference sketch in the background. And now I'm going to just recolor each stroke. So at the moment it's just a black outline, but I'm going to change the color of each shape. So let's start with the outside stroke. Instead of, if you tap on the color, instead of a black contour, I'm just going to select no color. And then within the color, I'm going to go into my swatches. I'm using the 3D Letters Toolkit warm color palette. I'm going to just make it this shade of purple. We're going to change it in a minute, so it doesn't matter too much at this stage what color you're using. Then I'm selecting the inside stroke, and again, I'm going to remove the stroke and change its color to like a lighter purple. Now let's grab the 3D effect and change the color to an even darker purple, like that. What we're going to do now is connect the shapes together. So I want to connect this shape to this shape. So all we need to do is kind of create an additional shape. So I'm going to create a new vector layer and I'm going to position it just above that dimensional effect. And using the same color, so the same dark purple, and using my pen tool, I'm just going to draw like a nice triangle to fill in the shape. So it should look like this. Make sure the color is there. And if you need to, you can easily reposition your anchor point so that it really is in the right spot. Let's do that again here. Great. Now let's go back into the layers and you'll see that you have 4 different shapes for those angles. I'm just going to combine them all together. So I'm just going to grab them all at the same time. So I've grabbed this layer, and if you click on that shape here, you can tap on add and it's just going to blend every shape together. Make sure you grab the dimension as well. Make sure you grab both layers, so all of your angles and the dimensional effect, and you can add them all together. So now they should all be on one layer. Okay, I'm going to create a new layer again for the background. So I'm going to make a new vector layer. I'm positioning it below everything else. You can grab this rectangle icon and just create a big rectangle in the background. Let's change the color to something different, something we haven't used yet. Maybe something like that for now will be fine. Guys, just a quick reminder, you should have your background, which is just a rectangle on a separate layer. You should have your colored shape with your inside stroke, your outside stroke, and your dimension. They should all be vector. They should all be on separate layers. Now we can move on to the next part, which is all about adding texture, shadows, highlights, and color. Let's keep going. We're going to try and add like a chrome effect to this S. The way I like to do it is kind of by dividing my shape into 2 and having the top a certain color and the bottom a different color with a very contrasty line dividing the middle. I like to use like a very dark color and a very light color in order to create the contrast. So we're going to begin with the inside stroke and we're going to create a clipping mask. So in order to create a clipping mask with Affinity, you create a new layer, and this time we're going to create a pixel layer. We're going to combine both vector and pixel within the same piece. So this shape is going to remain a vector file, but every texture and color we're going to add is going to be a pixel layer. So I'm going to tap on pixel layer, and then you need to select that pixel layer and then drag it on top of the layer you want to create the clipping mask on. So it's now hidden within that stroke layer, and that's actually your clipping mask. We can now switch to the pixel persona. So if you tap on the Affinity icon here, you can move on to pixel. That is going to give you all of your brushes, and that's the brushes that I've created in my 3D Letters Toolkit. They are pixel brushes. You can go ahead and select any brush you want, really, either the clean noise or the rife grain. They both work really well. They just have different type of textures, so feel free to play with them. By default, the brushes are quite big, so 1500 pixel is quite massive. Let's go ahead and just lower that brush to about 300 pixels. And I'm going to start creating this dividing shape. I'm going to divide my shape into 2 sections. You'll see that I like to work gradually. I like to slowly build up my colors. Feel free to play with different colors as well. When you do that, I'm going to add a bit of white here, maybe lower the size of the brush so I can kind of focus on this spot here. So this is going to be my divider. So I know everything above here is going to be purple and everything below that is going to be orange. These are the colors I've chosen, but you can use absolutely any color. The reason I'm using purple and orange is because they're complementary colors and they work really well together. They're quite contrasting. So I'm going to try and add a bit of more darker color at the top. And I'm not trying to be too precise here. I'm just trying to kind of create different spots of darker colors, if that makes sense. And you can add like a few different colors. Like you can see I'm adding a bit of a different purple here. Okay, I'm going to grab like a very darker color now and make the brush quite small. And I'm going to slowly try and add a bit of a darker line here. And it's already creating that chrome effect, which is really cool. Gradually make it bigger. And here I'm going to transition into an orange color. So one way to do that is by grabbing like a darker orange. I'm going to gently add a bit more orange. But you can see my brush is only 10% of flow, which means that it's not putting too much color on the canvas, which is what we want. I think it works better to really work gradually. I'll try and add orange all the way down. Let's grab like a lighter shade of orange, almost like a yellow now. Like I'm kind of gradually moving on to yellow. And again, I'm trying not to make it too perfect. Like I'm trying to give this illusion of like movement and like different colors shining on that letter form. And now I'm grabbing a very light yellow and kind of focusing on these two areas here. Let's leave it like that for now. We can always go back to it later on, but I'm going to do the same for the outside stroke. So I worked on the inside, but now I want to work on the outside stroke. So same thing, new layer, make it a pixel layer and put it on that outside stroke layer. Here, guys, we're going to do exactly the same as we did before. Let's grab that lighter purple again, make the brush quite small. And I'm just going to replicate what I did, but this time on the stroke. Again, trying to create that gradient effect. I'm really sorry if you can hear the birds in the background, but that's what happens when you live in Australia. There's lots of birds. And unfortunately, I've tried, but they will not stop. I've been trying to yell at them, but so again, just trying to kind of create different reflections of color, pretty much. I think a darker purple is going to look quite nice. Maybe in that little corner here. Almost like if it was like a little shadow, make that smaller. I like to create like a V shape here in those little angles. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. So it's a lot of back and forth between different sizes, different colors. I think it doesn't have to be perfect. It really doesn't matter if it's not a perfect gradient. Okay, so I'm moving on to orange now. Adding some orange at the bottom. And some yellow even. Cool. I think this is looking pretty good. I am now going to move on to the dimensional effect. I will go back to all of the shapes and add even more details in a minute, but I like to have kind of like a basic overview of where the colors are going to be before I do the rest. So same thing, I'm creating a new pixel layer and dragging it on top of that dimensional effect. Here, I'm going to change the blending mode of that layer. At the moment, we've just placed colors, but now I want to place a shadow. So that clipping mask, that pixel layer that I've created, if you select it, instead of setting the blending mode to normal, you can actually change it to multiply. If I grab like a dark purple with my brush, I can then make it look like a very dark shadow, which is exactly what I want. So again, trying to create different type of reflection. It's a bit hard to see on screen, but I'm just focusing on certain areas just to create some shadows. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but create some highlights. So again, creating a new pixel layer. And if you create it just above that clipping mask, it's creating a second clipping mask already. And instead of multiply or normal, I'm going to go with add. And that's just going to brighten up everything. So with a very light purple, maybe like this one, actually, let's go with this one. Nice. It's awesome. I love it. You can see it's creating this like glowy effect. And that brush has a very nice grain to it, which I absolutely love. Grainy brushes are definitely my favorite. So you can see I'm trying to create those random shapes. Like I haven't really thought about where to add highlights. They kind of just appear naturally when I kind of go like that and try and add some reflections. And I think the more casual, the more organic it can be, the better it will look, because then it won't look like it's just something made digitally by a computer. I think I am very happy with that. Now we can try and work a little bit more on the background. Let's go back to our background layer. So make sure you select the layer and change the color like that. Let's create a new pixel layer. We're going to try and kind of create like a shadow around the edges. So I'm creating a new pixel layer. We don't need to create a clipping mask here. So let's just change the blending mode of that layer to multiply already. So I have a new pixel layer just above my rectangle, my background. Let's see, I might play with the rough. I'm going to keep the same brush. I've started with the clean noise shader. I think I'm going to keep going with that one. I'm just going to kind of focus on the edges like that and create like a vignette type of style in the outside. So it's kind of creating like a nice shadow. Let's create a new layer again, a new pixel layer above that. And now I'm going to keep the blending mode set to normal. But I'm going to grab like a lighter shade of purple and kind of just trying to highlight the center like that. Actually, let's try and play with the noise texture. So it's actually quite a nice brush that allows you to add some noise in the background. You can play with that one, or let me have a look. The retro texture is quite nice as well. It just gives that nice grainy effect in the background. It might be hard to see on the screen, but you can play with those. I'm going to go with the noise texture. I think that's quite nice, and kind of just focus on the center of my canvas, almost like if there was like something glowing behind that S. At this stage, I have positioned all of my colors. I have some basic texture happening, but I like to add even more shadow and even more highlights to just give it a little bit more depth. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back to that inside stroke, and we're going to create a second clipping mask. If you select the clipping mask, create a new pixel layer, and we're going to change the blending mode to add. We're going to add some highlights. So let's grab like a very light purple. I really want to encourage you guys to play with different colors, different sizes, different brushes, and really experiment. So I'm still using the clean noise shader, and I'm going to make it quite small. And what I'm going to do is try and add some highlight here, so it's a little bit more glowy. So you can see the difference. It's just kind of emphasizing the glow. And I can do the same here. It doesn't matter what color you're using, to be honest, but just trying to add more glow on some places. So I'll show you the before and after. So that was before I added the glow, and after. So you can see it really makes a big difference. And let's do the same for the outside stroke. So the outside, I'm creating a new pixel layer, and I'm changing the blending mode to add. Let's grab a light purple, and again, just trying to intensify the glow. Playing with different colors, because I think that always looks way better. So you can see what I'm trying to do. Like there was like a glow here. So I'm trying to add a bit of glow on the stroke as well next to it. All right, that was the glow that I added on the actual stroke. So you can see the before and after. Now I'm going to add even more glow on the dimensional effect. So same thing, creating a new clipping mask and changing the blending mode to add. And let's grab a light purple. And I'm just trying to intensify that glow here. Kind of trying to create like a metallic effect. Now, you will see that in the 3D Letter Toolkit, I have provided this highlight pen, and I actually really like to use this pen to create a stroke around my shapes, and I think that kind of adds that nice little glow to your artwork. So let's just hide all of our layers for now. So we have the background, we have the S. What we can do is create a new layer above the S, create a pixel layer, and change the blending mode to add. And here we're going to play with that highlight pen brush. And what I'm going to do is just go over the edges of my shape, but you want to make it very tiny. You might have to lower the accumulation and the flow. It's about 50% each. You can increase the size of your brush and kind of gently go around the edges of your shape like that. This is just going to create like a nice glow. And because the blending mode is add, it's also creating like a nice glow effect. And I can use like a light purple. It does not really matter, but feel free to play with different colors like I always recommend. And with Affinity, if you want to add like a stabilizer, something to make the shape a bit more stable and have more control, you can actually put a rope stabilizer or window stabilizer. And you'll see it kind of will help if you need to have like a steadier hand. Might even play with that color here. A bit too dark. Let's go back to a light purple. Also gonna join the corners like that. Recreate that bevel effect. Feel free to play around with the window stabilizer as well. It works a little bit better for like shorter curves. I find that the rope works best when you're trying to draw like a long line. And at the bottom, you can even like play with like a yellow color. I think that would look quite nice. So as you can see, I'm going all around all of the edges, but I'm applying different type of pressures, so it's not like a single perfect stroke. Otherwise, I would have used like a vector for that. I made it perfect, but that's not what I want. I want the imperfection. I want the irregularity. So this is what I have. I'm going to see if I can maybe intensify that glow, that stroke, by just duplicating the layer. So I'm going to select the layer and click copy and then click paste. And you can see it's just like doubling up the effect without having to do it again. So I really like that. I'm going to select both layer and merge the two layers selected. So you just slide from left to right on both layers, click on this icon here and click merge selected. Okay, now let's add a few sparkles. I'm going to create a new layer on top of that S, make it a pixel layer. Let's move it above everything else just so it doesn't get too confusing. We can even rename that layer and call it stars, just so that we know what we're doing. Here within your brushes, you can grab the lens flare and it's automatically going to make the brush white. You can change the color by creating clipping mask after that, but I'm going to keep it white. But I'm going to change the blending mode of that layer to add once again. So here I'll let you guys play with it. You've probably guessed what we're doing. We're just going to stamp our flares wherever we think is best, so add them in the background. And I would recommend making them different sizes. You can also make them different opacities just to make it more realistic. So if I wanted to change the color of that layer, I would just create a new pixel layer and kind of drag it on top of that star layer. And you can make them like a nice yellow, and using the gradient bucket tool, you can see it's kind of filled the layer. And now your stars are like yellow instead of white. It's a bit hard to see on screen, but I kind of like that yellow look. Almost done. I think one last thing I want to do is add a bit of noise on the entire canvas just to make it look less digital and kind of give that illusion of like a photography or something. So let's create a new layer on top of everything else, just a pixel layer. And we can use like a purplish color. Let's just go with the retro texture. It's a bit hard to see what I'm doing, but I promise it's doing something. And you can see it's added that noise retro texture on top. So that was before and after. And you can change the blending mode here. You can kind of play with like a multiply or color burn. And it's just adding almost like a paper texture as well. Like it has that like kind of grainy texture to it. All right, and there you have it. This is how I created this Chrome 3ds in Affinity Designer. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you learned some helpful tips in Affinity Designer. Please make sure to tag me if you try this tutorial. I'd love to see your work. And also don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.